Good evening and good morning to everyone. Good morning because we have Dharma friends joining us from the other side of the world in Asia. This series is being sponsored by our Dharma brothers and sisters. Vietnamese community has a very active group that does these Zoom programs. It's called Bodhidharma for All, which means bodhicitta for all. So those of you who go to YouTube, you might want to look for this particular channel and subscribe to it. There are many, many teachings in just each week. So today is class number 4 of our 6-week series. So let us begin our program this evening by doing the traditional opening recitation that we do in the Drikung Kagyu lineage. Basically, the recitation that we will do, even though there are 4 different parts to it, really they all point to one thing. They point to, in fact, Bodhidharma, bodhicitta. Bodhicitta is the altruistic mind, to altruistic intention, altruistic motivation, that says that we will do what it takes in order to wake up from this confusion and to be free from bondage so that we can then more effectively benefit other beings. So that's, in a nutshell, that's what bodhicitta is. So for those of you who are here in the temple, and if this is the first time you are joining us, the pause is because this is being translated simultaneously. Not simultaneous to me, but the 2 translators. And Andres is translating into Spanish, and Abraham is translating into Vietnamese. So that's what's going on. But it's a good opportunity for us, since this program really is about training our hearts, our mind to be free from distractions. So I would encourage you to take these pauses as an opportunity to just let the mind be quiet and still. including mantra. Stop. Yeah, including, during this time, chanting mantras, chanting prayers, all of that. In the Mahamudra instructions says, when you get into the actual Mahamudra practice, there's nothing to recite anymore. And there's nothing to repeat anymore. Because the mind is what you're watching. So even that kind of distraction, even skillful, in other contexts, skillful, encouraged practices can also become a distraction. Then how much more, all the other types of distractions we should put down. What we are reciting at the beginning, if you know the words, you join in the recitation. If you don't know the words, and then more importantly, whether you know or you don't know the words, is to listen to the words and then to take those words into your mind, into your heart. These words, and when you begin to really mean what these words are saying, right? When these words really kind of enters your heart, enters your mind, they will be the condition for the arising of joy and happiness, which are steps within this system of practice. So the arising of joy and happiness is in step 5 and 6 of this system of 16 steps of meditation anchored on breath. If you recall from our previous classes, step 5 and 6 is when it says, I will train in experiencing joy, and then I will train in experiencing happiness. Sometimes I think people who practice this are a little confused, like, wait, is the joy and happiness going to turn up suddenly? I'm not feeling either of that right now. The key word there is train. So train means, you are deliberately bringing these two qualities up. So we have experienced joy and happiness. And quickly, the difference between these two, one is louder than the other. The first one is louder, so to say. The second one is quiet and continuous, more stable. And so they are referencing two very similar feelings. But it has to be joy and happiness that are, we say, without being linked to unskillful experiences. So it should not be the joy and happiness that you experience while thinking back to, oh, when I went to that fancy spa, oh, that was really good. It's not the joy and happiness that came up during those moments. It's definitely not the joy and happiness that came up, when you're like, yeah, that day yelling at that guy, that was really good. Not joy and happiness that comes from there. Yeah. So later, when we get to 5 and 6, I will talk more about what are the skillful sources of bringing up joy and happiness. So now let us begin with the opening recitation. As usual, we will say one time in the different languages, in the different audio channels, one time these 4 parts, and then I will chant one time these 4 parts in Tibetan. All sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and all-knowingness. May they have happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly establish them in the most perfect and precious Buddhahood. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached by the merit of generosity and other good deeds. May I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness which is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from the bias of attachment and aversion. jebe dra no par jebe ge tarba dam tam je kembe bardu chopra jeba tam che yu se jebe ma nang ka dang nyambe sen chen tam je dewa Dam den dung ya dan zhe ne de la na me pa yang ta bara zo be chang ju ren po je to bara je de je de sang ma ge ki bar de lu nga yi sum ke wa la go ma shi bar de lu nga yi sum ke wa la go de de ne Sung de ne ma chang da sam gi par du lo nga yi sum ge wa la gu san je cho dan so ge cho nam la chang chu par du da ne gyab su je da ge jin so ge be so nang ge Rola pencher sanje drubra jo Manang kadang nyampe senjen tamche dewa dang dewe gyudan dembora gyurji dungyao dang dungyao gi gyudan drewa gyurji Dungyao me pe dewa dang me drewa gyurji ne ring cha dang ni dang drewe tang nyang la ne bar gyurji So briefly, right? The reason why we have this series is because the head of the Drigunkagyu order of Tibetan Buddhism, one of the two heads, one is in Tibet and one is outside of Tibet. So the one outside of the Tibet, Drigung Kyabgon Chesang Rinpoche, in recent years have emphasized the practice of mindfulness of breathing based on this text, this sutra called the Mindfulness of Breathing Sutra. This sutra, the name in Pali is Anapanasati Sutta. It is the basis of very active meditation communities in the Theravada world, which is the Buddhism found in Sri Lanka, Burma, Thailand, Myanmar, Laos, Cambodia, those areas. And so in those areas, this particular sutra and the 16 steps taught in this sutra is the main source of a lot of meditation traditions in Southeast Asia right now. Now, these traditions don't necessarily take all 16 steps. They might focus on certain aspects of it, although there are also some that will do all the 16 steps. Now, here, within this context, we call this way of practicing the 16 steps Shravasti meditation, because the head of the order, His Holiness, has given it that name because, first of all, this sutra was first taught on many occasions in this place in India called Shravasti. So that's one reason. Secondly, I guess he doesn't just call it the Anapanasati meditation, in part because within the Buddhist world, if you say Anapanasati, people almost exclusively think, oh, you must mean one of the various traditions found in Southeast Asia. Here, you will see that the sutra itself, the text itself, when it gives the 16 steps, there's a lot of kind of gray area. So that even within the Theravada communities, different emphasis and interpretations come up in how to actually practice the 16 steps. So in the Shravasti meditation, His Holiness's approach is informed not only by the words of the sutra, but as well from the Tibetan background that includes the Mahamudra tradition, the Dzogchen tradition, and then the more general Vajrayana or Tantric tradition, as well as Zen or Chan traditions in East Asia. Because His Holiness has interest in these areas and has, at different points in his life, trained in these different areas. And so he is bringing them together so that, so he gives it this approach, this name, to kind of signal how it's a little different from what you might know as Anapanasati, as popularly known. Now, my job actually in this series is not necessarily to teach Shravasti meditation and all the details, the way that His Holiness teaches it. What he said to some people who are interested in this is that if you want to know the basic sutra, then please ask Dr. HUN to do a program on that. And so here we are. So my job is mostly to help you understand first the basic sutra. In fact, Christie's team have arranged with Kimodroma in Maine to offer a number of weekend retreats over Zoom on the Shravasti meditation. So if you are interested and have time to do that, please do participate and register for that program. So now let's look at, let's go to where we have already started with the sutra. So I have some copies here in the temple. Yes, so as I explained last time, if you look at the sutra itself, and I encourage you to at least read the sutra carefully a few times. Then at the heart of the sutra is the method itself, and the method is a method that consists of 16 steps divided into 4 groups. So they are sometimes called the 4 tetrads. So 16 steps divided into 4 groups. So the sutra opens by basically telling us when, on what occasion did the Buddha teach this. What is of interest, I think, when you read the sutra itself, when we don't have time, for this course to go look at the sutra very carefully, but just to call your attention when you read. So at the beginning, so if you read like in the English translation, the one by Bhikkhu Bodhi, then the introductory section, in that section, the section he identifies as the introductory section. What's really interesting here is that you get basically an inventory, so to say, a list of the various types of meditations that the Buddha's disciples were working on, that they were cultivating. So you get a whole list. So it talks about four foundations of mindfulness, those who abide in the development of the 4 strivings, those who develop the 4 bases of spiritual power, and so on and so forth. Now, especially relevant to what we are doing is that at the end of this list, he says, and then there are these monks who cultivate, who develop what's known as the four immeasurables. Immeasurable loving kindness, or goodwill, immeasurable compassion, immeasurable joy, and immeasurable equanimity. Right after he lists that, then he says, and then there are those who train in recognizing that which is unclean to be foul, that which recognizes that which is impermanent. Yeah. Then right after that, then he says, and then there are those who practice the mindfulness of breathing. In particular, these three, the four immeasurables, right? Those are uplifting, right? Then the next listing is foulness and impermanence. As far as you and I are concerned, we probably say, that's kind of a downer, right? Then he says, and then there are those who practice mindfulness of breathing. So actually, the mindfulness of breathing in the 16 steps, yeah, the four immeasurables are important. Important how? As the basis, as the foundation. Then, in case you get too romantic, too carried away, you also need to see foulness. That which is unclean to be unclean. That which is impermanent to be impermanent. Those two are developed within the context of the 16 steps. So last week I joked, I said, if our stability of mind, clarity of mind, is only there or only works, when we have like very nice sandalwood incense, floating in the air, then it's not enough. We also need to be able to have this stable mind, clear mind. I said, perhaps I should bring some cat poop to burn, which of course nobody does that in a temple or a yoga studio, But really, Buddha's way is not just, when things are pretty, things are nice, temperature is perfect, then, oh yes, my mind is calm, my mind is clear. Then if someone's burning cat poop, So it's a metaphor, right? It's a symbol. You cannot go around life only expecting sandalwood. There are many times when people are burning cat poop everywhere. So the 16 steps helps us to work, build up power, build up energy, so that we remain even and not dragged around. In the next section of this sutra, under the section where the mindfulness of breathing starts, the Buddha starts giving instructions. He brings together two other sets of, before he goes into the 16 steps. He says this mindfulness of breathing also brings together what's known as the four establishings of mindfulness and the 7 factors of awakening. So he brings these two lists together. Last week we started looking at the 4 establishings of mindfulness. What that is referring to is that these 4 areas in our experience. Of course, there are many ways to divide up our experience, but the Buddha used these 4 contexts, which is from the most obvious to the most subtle. So it's body, feeling, mind. Remember that mind is not one thing, okay? Maybe it's better to say thoughts. And then finally, phenomena. So these are the 4 areas of you and I. If we think about when they say I, when I experience things, it's in these 4 contexts. So the Buddha says, by looking closely at these 4 contexts, we can develop skillful mindfulness. So in fact, the 16 steps, remember, divided into 4, they are these 4. The first 4 steps is turning our attention to what we call body. Second 4 steps, turning our attention to what Buddha calls feelings. Then the next 4, the third set, turning it to thoughts, to the mind. Then the last 4, turning it to the most subtle object, which is the basic building blocks of experience, called phenomena. So then, here it says, the Buddha says, when this is developed and cultivated, when these 4 areas are developed and cultivated, then it leads you to the 7 factors of awakening. And of the 7 factors of awakening, the first factor is mindfulness. So actually, mindfulness is not the end, it's the beginning. And when the seven, Buddha says, when these seven factors of awakening are developed and cultivated, then it leads to true knowledge that leads to liberation, freedom from confusion. Then he says, okay, now you want to practice this mindfulness of breathing. And then he says, so first, he says, go find a good place to do this. So in this text, in this teaching, he says, go to a forest, the base of a tree, or an empty hut. So basically it's saying, go to a place where there's not a lot going on and no one is going to bother you. Now, these places that no one's going to bother you and not much is going on, right? There is a slight element, I would say, of slight danger. Maybe not actual danger, but emotionally, because actually these places in the Buddhist context, right? The forest is not like, nobody goes hiking in the forest. Only now because we live in the city, we go hiking in the forest. Buddha's time, forest is a little dangerous. They're tigers, So in the sense that there's a little kind of, you're slightly kind of alert. Under the tree, right? We just think, oh yeah, it's a hot place, go sit under the tree, relax. Well, could be true, but again, in the ancient Indian context, under the trees are also where spirits gather. So humans don't like to go under, especially old trees, like, I don't know, there could be, things hanging around there. So people don't go there. So partly you go there also, people won't go there to bother you because they don't like to go to places like that. An empty hut is basically abandoned, what we call haunted house. Happy Halloween. I mean, not literally haunted house, but again, people don't go because. So I think there is a sense of like, on one level, no one is going to bother you there. But on another level, you are not going to a spa. Yeah, you're going to a place where you are a little bit alert. Yeah. And that's important. I think that quality, is important. Not just because we are so like, I need to find the perfect place. Then we go sign up at a resort to meditate. Maybe as beginners, that's necessary. But what the Buddha recommends here is not just about comfortable, quiet, nobody bothering. It's also slightly, you'll be alert. Then here, Buddha says, having found such a place, you sit down with legs crossed and body straight, erect. So these are the 2 points, the 2 most important points on how you sit. So some of us cannot sit on the floor with legs crossed, then you sit on a chair, you sit on, main thing is you want to place your body in a stable way and upright. And as I said before, this is related to the 2 qualities of mind that we are also cultivating, which is a stable and still mind. But this stable and still mind is not a dark. It's not unaware. It's also bright and clear. So the straight body is related to a clear mind. The stable and not moving is related to stable mind. So these are shamatha and vipassana. So now let's try to sit in this way. However, you get to the point where you feel that your body is stable, meaning then you are not putting like stress or weight on one side of the body over the other side of the body. So sometimes when you sit down, you imagine yourself to be like a pendulum on a string. A pendulum, then it will kind of, so you can move around a little, until kind of moving less, and then let the body just settle quietly. So let your body settle naturally, quietly into this posture where you are seated, stable, and upright. You can more successfully remain in this way if you put the intention there and say, for the next 5, 10, however long, I'm going to maintain this posture, maintain this position, and I'm going to be content not to fidget, not to do this, not to do that, just to let everything quiet down. Then the Buddha says, and then bring mindfulness to the front. Yeah, there are several different interpretations of what bringing mindfulness to the front means. Here, I think it's sufficient to think of it as the ability to be mindful, meaning for our mind to be present, is not something that we have to create. It's not something that we have to go look for somewhere else. We already have this ability. So to bring that to the front is to say, now you are, again, with intention, with some determination, you are saying, right now, what I want to bring to the front, what is already there in the mind, I want to bring to the front this ability to not be distracted. Then the Buddha says, ever mindful, turn your attention into breathing in and breathing out. So this is not yet the first step. It's actually preliminary to the first step. It's simply naturally be aware. The mindfulness that you have brought to the front, now you let that mindfulness turn to the experience of breath. Yeah, in this step, no concern with long or short yet, with the breath. Simply stay with breath. Turn your attention to breath arising and ceasing, one after another. So just lightly, not too tight, just lightly place your attention to your experience of breathing. Then whenever you are ready at your own pace, you can start the first step. In the first step, the Buddha says, as you are breathing in long, know that you are breathing in long. And as you are breathing out long, know that you are breathing out long. So from last week, I said long is not just a matter of time. Long is also related to obvious or rough, like very obviously. A breath that is more obvious. Know that, this is very obvious. And then this is very breathing out. So here you are not forcing yourself to breathe long, but simply by saying to your own self, breathing in long, I know that this is long. Breathing out long, I know that it is long. In that very subtle way, you are gently helping your breath to become longer and more obvious. At your own pace, whenever you're ready, you can mentally say, and when I am breathing in short, then I know this is a short breath. And when I'm exhaling out short, I know this is a short exhalation. Now, without using any force to try to turn your breath from long to short, simply mentally saying that to yourself, then you experiment with shorter breath in and out. If you pay attention, you'll begin to differentiate two types of breath within the context of short breath. There is short breath that is the result of the body becoming uncomfortable, becoming agitated, becoming stressed. Then we experience breath. The breath that occurs is very short. But there's also another type of short breath that is actually the result of having completely relaxed the body. Then at that point, the body naturally needs very little oxygen, actually. So there are two types of short breath, in fact. So see if you can differentiate these two types of short breaths. In these first two steps, the key word is to know. To recognize, to understand, to know what is going on with regards to breath. Then at your own pace, whenever you are ready, as you breathe in, instead of now paying attention to long or short, now you want to feel your entire body. So your attention now is not just on breath, but the effect that breath that you are taking in and letting out, the effect of this breath on your entire body. From the very top of your head all the way down to your toes, to your fingers, everywhere. When you're in this third step, in some ways you are temporarily giving up the calmness and the relative quiet that you achieve in step 1 and 2. you are temporarily giving up that so that you can begin to notice how busy the body is. You can hear your heartbeat, your pulse pulsing, blood rushing through all the veins, all the bodily processes. You become sensitized to them. So you now train to experience all of this. So the verb for the third step is to train to experience all the bodily busyness that is going on right now. And then the fourth step is also to train, but now train to calm all this body busyness. So the third step, don't force it. Don't linger too long there, especially at the beginning, especially if you are not yet so sensitized to seeing all the busyness of the body. In fact, you think, no, the body now is very quiet. Then just to become aware of perhaps your legs falling asleep, or there is some tension, just pay attention to the tension. Then without letting the tension, the pains, the aches get too strong, then you begin to do the fourth step, which is calming all this. How do you calm it? Now again with breath, breathing in, breathing out. Experience the sweeping power of breath, soothing all the busyness, cooling down all the heat. Bringing blood, bringing energy, bringing oxygen, and taking carbon dioxide out. So as I suggested last week, this first 4 steps, in the next 4, they are exactly parallel, except that the first 4 is directing our attention to the most obvious aspect of who we are, which is this body. And the next is now moving into a more subtle aspect of our being, which is what's known as feelings. But the feelings here is not talking about, all the complicated emotions. It's not like, that song, that ancient song, feelings, nothing more than feelings, not that kind of feelings that you make songs of. Sometimes this is Vedana is translated as feeling tone, right? There's a tone to all the emotions that we experience. And what are the tones? The Buddha says it's sufficient to pay attention to 3 tones: pleasurable, painful, and neutral, which then gives rise to like, dislike, don't care. So this second area is to begin to pay attention to these feeling tones that turn up from moment to moment. Now, although in this area of feeling or feeling tones, there is pleasurable, painful, and neutral, right? However, in these 4 steps, we don't walk near to the painful one. We don't go there. We're not engaging that feeling tone. In fact, we are engaging the pleasurable feeling tone. And so there, just like with breath, right? With the body, when we started with long and short, we are not doing anything to agitate our body. In fact, the knowing the long and knowing of the short is to put the body in a good place. Likewise here then, joy and happiness, or rapture and pleasure, according to Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation, whatever the translation is, right? Step 5 and 6 is to deliberately train to bring up this experience of joy. Like I said, is a noisier, more obvious type of happiness. Then happiness in the next step is a more stable. So these 2 are the parallel of long and short. And the short breath is the natural short, not the agitated short breath. Okay? It's when the body doesn't need oxygen that much anymore. Then it's a quiet kind of short. And that is the equivalent of the happiness. The step 6, step 5 and step 6 is bringing up joy. Then that joy turns into happiness. Now, throughout all of this, the reference point is still breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, breathing out. But after step 2, no longer, oh, this is long, this is short. No need to put your energy there. Just stay with the breath, in, out, in, out. But 30% in, out, step 5, 70% joy. 30% step in, out, step 6, 70% happiness. Just as when we make the transition from step 2 to 3, you have to kind of temporarily give up, right? The relative calm and good feeling of just staying with the breath. Yeah? So it's a way of like stepping away from that. Yeah? But stepping away, not looking away. Stepping away so that you can see the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is, even though temporarily the body seems okay, but actually it's still very busy, right? So step 3 is to pay attention to actually, the body is still very busy. The body is still inflamed, right? Likewise, now, 5 and 6 is joy and happiness. So you're feeling good, but you need to go to step 7. Step 7 says, now I train to see, to experience mental formations. And there is talking about the busyness of the mind. Here, not so much like noticing your anger, jealousy. No. Don't let those come up, but now it's those feeling tones, like, don't care. Yeah, step 3. Again, there, what you're doing is you are stepping back from the joy and the happiness. This is really important to be able to pick it up and put it down. This is a characteristic of Buddhist spirituality, which is not appealing necessarily to everyone. Some people just want to be in rapture, you know. The Buddhist, the Buddhist position is, I said, it's like James Dean cool, It's cool, It's like we never get carried away. Even however much joy and bliss, we say, okay, stop. It stops. That's an important quality. We don't have lost in bliss, lost in rapture, then finish. So throughout these 16 steps, you see this movement of picking up, putting down, picking up, putting down. Yeah, you're developing the ability to be able to calm things, but you're not attached to the calm. You also develop the ability to put it down. So this kind of training, when you're actually doing it, it doesn't necessarily give you any kind of like spiritual or mental high. It doesn't. But what it does is it habituates you so that when you step off the cushion, you have the ability to pick it up when you want to pick it up, put it down when you want to put it down. you also habituate the ebb and flow of things. And you're not so easily thrown off when things don't go just the direction you want them to go. Yeah, so in a way, there are other types of meditation that can feel really good. From that perspective, right? There are mind-altering substances that you can take that is faster, that gives you a good feeling, you know? Then, of course, there's addiction involved, you know, messy, that kind of stuff. But my point is that, you know, you can drink things, take things, smell things that can give you really kind of amazing feeling. But once that feeling is over, you are just a mess, if not a bigger pile of mess. Another underlying kind of training that is going on with breath, yeah, is that it's slowly getting us to get it, that everything is inconstant, everything is impermanent, everything is constantly changing, changing, changing. And so what we're doing is slowly, slowly brainwashing ourselves. But literally in the word brainwashing, washing our mind of its obscurations. Now, obscurations are all the crazy, you know, beliefs that we have, mistaken ideas that we have. Like, oh, things are naturally reliable, permanent. We're washing that away, but in a very quiet way, you know, no fireworks going on, but you're habituating. So that's why breath is used all throughout the 16 steps, because as you're developing certain things here, underlying is you understand inconstancy, you understand impermanence, you understand change, you understand that it is not sure, it is uncertain. Then you slowly become more and more free, which is what all these 16 steps ultimately lead to be free. Then next, step 9, it says, now you should train when you breathe in, you experience thoughts. Translated as mind, but thoughts better, because we tend to make mind into one thing. So here, breathing in, we experience thoughts. Now we begin to pay attention to all the busyness thoughts, the mental gossip. Earlier, it's just the tone, right? Here, thoughts. Now we turn out. Now, it's not very calming, not as calming as step 1 and 2, just breathe in, breathe out, or step 3 and 4. I mean, step 5 and 6, joy, happiness. Yeah. So step 9, there's a little bit more going on, but this is skillfully, right? Skillfully paying attention to all the mental gossip, blah, 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 experiencing the mind that way. Yeah? Then breathe out, experiencing the mind. So that's 9.
Ajá. ¿Y?
Bueno,
Ajá.
entonces voy a regar las plantas aquí mientras salen. Ya son las 8:10.
Uh-huh.
At the beginning, with step 9, don't spend too much time there, because we can't take too much of, paying attention to all the mental gossip, all the thoughts. So then you go to 10. Step 10 is gladdening the mind, it says. So whereas in the first set of 4 and second set of 4, you actually have 2 steps of building up, a good place before you go poke around, so to say, right? And step 5 and 6, again, you build up a good place. Yeah? 7 and 8, you are kind of poking around. Here, by the time we get to the third set of 4, and now it's in relation to thoughts, the mind, right? First, you experience the mind, as in the busyness of thoughts. Pum, 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 pum. Just that one step. So this is kind of like the reverse of what we did earlier. In a way, now you have built up enough stamina. You don't need to like get to a good place and then stir things up. You immediately stir things up, so to say, by looking at how busy your thoughts are. Then the next one, you gladden it. And how do you gladden it? Which is, you say, doesn't matter. The busyness doesn't matter, because I will not get dragged around by the busyness. So you gladden your mind that way. Like, so now it's like, if it is like, watching busy traffic, right? Now you decide, I'm just going to park and stand on the side and watch the traffic. Then you can gladden your mind that way. Become detached. And go, wow, I don't need to be caught in this traffic. Yeah, with 10, we are training to say, I don't need to be caught up in this traffic. So you become gladdening the mind. 11, concentrating the mind. You train in. So now that you say, I don't need to get caught up in this. Even though it's going on, yes, your thoughts, you can't stop it yet. It's going on, but you have some kind of distance. You say, these are not my monkeys. This is not my circus. Then in 11, your mind becomes concentrated now. You see, it can all naturally come together. No problem. Then 12, and we'll talk about 9, 10, 11, 12 more in the next class. I just want to complete this here so that you're not left hanging, wondering what's going on. With 12, it says you free the mind. So that now the mind is free. But the freedom of the mind comes when the mind is now, it's now concentrated. Now it's free. But not yet the freedom of like enlightenment. This is a preliminary tasting of how the mind is now free. So 9, 10, 11, 12, they're quite close, these steps. In just one moment, even in life, daily life, walking around, 9, 10, 11, 12, you don't need to be sitting down to experience this. Watch how busy the mind is. Then gladden the mind by saying, but I don't need to get caught up in it. Then the mind becomes concentrated. Then you can put it down. It becomes free. 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah, so tonight we should stop here. We've already, as usual, exceeded our allocated time. But a few minutes in case anybody has a very important question you have to ask. Otherwise, you will be sleepless for the next week. Yes.
Dr. Lai, could you give some examples of mental formations, like the 3 tones, like just like, so they're not exactly thoughts, they can form.
Okay, so there's a question about, say a little bit about these mental formations in relation to the second set of 4. It's not so much examples. It's basically, you know, rather than the focus is not on the details of why you like or don't like something, but stay on the level of, oh, I have a reaction to that thing, which is basically like, or I have a reaction to that thing, which is basically don't like, or I have a reaction to that thing, which is don't care. So in that stage, right? Step 7, where it says, yeah, you experience mental formation, so you deliberately go wait for each moment, even as you're sitting here, you know, when your mind turns to right foot aching, don't like, okay, that's one. Then your mind turns to left foot, no ache. Oh, the response is like. So that experience of mental formation is to just, so the next moment, the incense comes your way, like, rather than, oh, it's sandalwood, oh, you know, Titi Fabi says it's so nice, you know, no, you stay away from all of that, but just note, like, don't care. Yeah. So you have to choose. That's why I train. Anybody else? Any question? See who's lifting a hand.
I have one question.
Yes.
Is it okay to meditate with the earplugs if I cannot get away from the city noise?
Oh, yes, it's okay. Yeah, you know, put something so that it's a little bit less distracting. Yes.
Yeah.
All kids running around yelling, you know. Don't, you know, go tell them, shut up, I need to meditate. But especially at the beginning, we find an environment that is quiet. But then the thing is that as you become better and better at it, then the sounds don't bother you anymore. But just like, when you first learn how to drive, you don't start with the streets of New Delhi. You go to Swananoa and not even Asheville, you go to Swananoa and learn how to drive. You go to a place where, it's not so difficult. So likewise with sound, But eventually, as one forest monk, he famously said, when his disciple complained to him about noise, he's like, wait, is the noise annoying you? Are you going out there to annoy the noise? It says, is the noise coming to annoy you? He says, the noise has no mind. It is not annoying you. You have to understand that, he says. But that is later, at the beginning, Yes. And sight also.
They have another question, but it's not to you, but for organizer. They asked about the video. Actually, we always live stream for 2 channels. One is for one is of English and one is of Vietnamese. So we each teaching we have a 2 live stream.
Okay.
So,
wonderful. Thank you.
So những ai mà muốn hỏi là có muốn nghe kênh tiếng Việt đó thì lúc nào chúng con cũng livestream trên 2 kênh thì sẽ có được 2 kênh nghe tiếng Việt mà mời một kênh Bồ Đề Tâm for All và Bodhisattva for All, so you can check 2 YouTube channel for 2 version. Thank you.
Thank you. Javier, if you're still there, can you share the link to DDIS where the sound files are there? So we have also created, without interruption, sound file, only my voice. Instead of video, there's also audio. So those who listen to the teachings in English and want just the voice, because too distracting to look at this person, then you can go to the site too.
We also make another recording from Zoom, just recording when Dr. HUN is teaching only, not
yes,
like
I saw that.
So so that means in teaching we have a 3 version.
Right. Someone is working hard, pausing, recording, pausing, recording.
Yeah.
Sadhu. Thank you.
Thank you, my wonderful team.
Yeah. So tonight we yes, is there somebody? One last
question.
I was just going to say that I shared the link to Christy so she can share it with the rest of the.
Oh, so you have shared it to Christy. Okay, so then Christy can post it on the chat or.
Post what? I cannot hear him.
Well, since I am not the host, I cannot post anything on the chat, just direct messages.
Oh, I see. Why don't you send to me?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah. Go ahead, Christy. Was there a question?
The last question, okay?
Yeah, last question. Yes, then we do dedication.
How about the theory that when we meditate, we focus on the breath? Is it better than we focus on like sound or any sound or another object?
Yeah. In this case, right? In this case, so the question, the Buddha, in this case, recommended breath specifically. Yes, there are many other sutras, many other places where the Buddha gave other topics. For example, in the Theravada tradition, there's a text called Visuddhimagga, where 40 different topics are given. In the Mahayana text, there is a text called the Shurangama Sutra, in Chinese, 楞严经, there, I think about 40 different topics, subjects are given. But as His Holiness say, the earliest method that the Buddha taught, and the Buddha taught consistently throughout his life, is actually this breath meditation. So that's why His Holiness chose this.
Thank you. So now I share the dedication book.
Yes. It's the Changju Semjo Rinpoche.
Oh, that's the only one you want? Okay.
Yes, yeah, we just changed that. Yes. So basically the dedication, it says, excellent and precious bodhicitta, where it is not arisen, may it arise. Where it has arisen, may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher. Changju Semjo Rinpoche Ma Ge Ba Nam Ge Yu Chi Ge Ba Nyam Ba Me Ba Yang Gong Ne Gong Du Pe Wer Shu. Thank you, everybody. See all of you next week. Bye.
Hi, thank you. Gracias, Dr. Han.
Thank you, Rinpoche.
Gracias.
Gracias.